I need to give you when to start. Okay, so good afternoon. We're still waiting for the third panelist, but we will start. I want to start by saying that this is being broadcasted, live broadcasted, and recorded. So there are more people watching us, and hopefully we'll watch it afterwards. And also we are in the era of podcasts, so I'm saying to myself that I should relate to it like a very intimate, nice podcast. Which is something that I really always enjoy doing. So I want to thank you all for joining us today for the discussion on business relationship, particularly in the high-tech sector between the United States and Israel, especially during these turbulent times. This event has been organized by TAU, Tel Aviv University, together with the US Embassy. And I want to start by briefly introduce myself. So I'm Jackie Goren. I am a senior lecturer at the Coller Business School and the head of the Sofaer Global MBA program. I have a few candidates here in the crowd, which is a one-year global MBA program in English focusing on entrepreneurship and innovation. This year we started with about 30 brilliant students. Half of which are from North America. And therefore, when I was asked to manage this panel, I did what I always do, and I'm asked to manage something, and I said yes. And I think that maybe I should talk with my shrink about why I say yes always. But I think that part of it is because I know that managing panels and teaching is the best way to learn, to study. And I always say yes to an opportunity to learn. So I said yes. When I started to prepare for this panel, just a minute, this is our panelist, so maybe she doesn't know. Nimrod, can you answer her, please? Okay. So when I started to prepare for this panel, thinking about this subject, I was kind of convinced, and I think that many of you are, that the current geopolitical situation in Israel already negatively influenced the business relationship in general, and in the high-tech sector in particular, also with the US. So I decided first thing to check the facts. And today when we want to check facts, we go to our friend chat. So I went to my friend chat and I asked to get some numbers, recent numbers, and this is what he or she, I don't know how to relate to it, this is what it told me. So over the past 2 decades, I guess you know that, Israel has established itself as a global leader in technology and innovation. The country is often referred to as startup nation, with over 6,000 startups currently operating across various sectors, including very hot ones like cybersecurity, AI, and biotech. We know that. But according to the data from IVC Research Center, it's an Israeli, very established research center, in 2023, Israeli tech companies raised a record of $18 billion in investment, despite the global economic uncertainties. So I asked myself, well, maybe it changed since then, because 2023 is a year, almost 2 years ago. So I explored further, and I looked at the relationship between Israel and the US when it comes to the high tech in recent years. So as you know, US has always played a pivotal role in this success. And in fact, the US is the largest source of foreign direct investments in Israel, accounting for approximately 40% of the foreign direct investments here. Many Israeli startups have successfully entered the US market. Firms like Waze, Mobileye, Fiverr became very local in the US, I would say. But is it still going on? I mean, in 2024, or has it changed? So I learned that in the last couple of years, the relationship has faced unique challenges. The geopolitical landscape has influenced investor sentiment. Yet, high-tech companies has remained resilient. The Israeli high-tech sector has continued to attract substantial US investments, particularly in the cybersecurity sector, about $5 billion in the last 2 years, showcasing the growing importance of security solutions in today's digital landscape. Moreover, partnership between Israeli tech firms and American companies has become more strategic, and a very recent survey by the Israeli Innovation Authority, actually from 2024, found that 60% of American executives consider Israel a critical partner in their innovation strategies. So if I want to summarize what chat told me, it seems that while the public sentiment in the US towards Israel experienced shifts during 2024, going from this direction to the other direction, and maybe back, I don't know, it seems like the business ecosystem, particularly in high-tech, continue to thrive, or at least how it looks right now. But my experience is that although chat is, great, I always make a point not to solely rely on it. And I actually prefer to talk to people, and to talk to people that are coming from the field and actually experiencing what's going on. And therefore, I'm super happy to have this panel or podcast, or however you want to call it. And I would like to introduce our exceptional group of panelists. Now we have 2. I hope that by the time I'll finish, the third one will show up. Each bringing their unique perspective on how to navigate these uncertain times. So I will start with you, Marina Grayson. Hi. So you are the economic officer of the US Embassy, right? Covering trade, investment, and regional integration issues, which you will explain to us later what it means. Marina has an extensive background in international relations, having previously served in Bulgaria, Honduras, and the Dominican Republic, and Washington, D.C. And before joining the Department of State, Marina was a lawyer in both private and public practices. She holds a BA from the University of Texas at Austin and JD from New York University. Marina's expertise is invaluable in understanding the role of the U.S. government in fostering trade and investment relationship, especially in times of uncertainty.
Thank you.
Okay. That's okay?
That all sounds
covers
great.
it? Amazing. So if, with your permission, I will go to our second panelist and do it really, really slowly, hoping that Esther will show up
That's why sometimes.
in the right moment. So our second panelist is Nimrod Rosenblum. Nimrod is a co-founder and managing partner at Epstein Rosenblum Maoz. The Rosenblum is his name, so he's the partner, where he heads the firm's corporate, M&A, and private equity department. Specializing in M&A, private equity, and venture capital, Nimrod brings a wealth of legal and business acumen to the panel. Prior to co-founding ERM in 2006, Nimrod studied at Oxford University and worked at Freshfields, which is a very established law firm in London. I cannot read the entire name, I'm sorry.
It's a German.
Okay. His experience in corporate law and investment, especially in high-tech venture, will provide, I believe, a great insight into the complexities of entering the US market. And I must say that Nimrod is the smartest person I know, and I'm very objective about it because he's my brother. And last but not least, and I will talk about her, and then, you see, and then she showed up. What a timing, Esther. Amazing, it's okay. We are also broadcasting this, and we are broadcasting this, Esther, and we are also recording it, but we are relating it to it like a nice small podcast.
Okay.
Okay, so feel free, and I'm just about to present you, so take a deep breath and everything is all right. So Esther Barak Landes is an experienced investor who focused on purpose-leading entrepreneurship in the sustainability sector. She has over 20 years in Israel diversity high-tech ecosystem. She has partnered with more than 70 startups, many of which have achieved successful exits or IPOs. Esther is passionate about fostering strategic partnerships between startups, private investors, government agencies, and public corporations. Her expertise in identifying and scaling innovative solutions in deep tech, particularly in planetary and human health, makes her a thought leader in both the investment and tech spaces. Actually, on a personal note, Esther is the best networking person I know. And I think that she's, I said before that Nimrod is the smartest man I know, and I'm objective because he's my brother. So Esther is one of the smartest women I know. And I know it because we are friends for so many years, since we were 16. And she's really a role model for me. So I'm so happy that she decided to join us this afternoon. And now when we're all here, so we can start. So thank you for being here today, and I look forward to our discussion. We have about an hour, more or less, and if it takes less, so I can take you around the campus, which is always beautiful.
Well, I did quite a tour, yeah.
You did it. So maybe you can take
Changed a
us for a
lot.
tour around the
Changed
campus.
a lot since
Okay,
I've been
it
here.
changed a lot. So as we Israelis, we like to cut to the chase. So I will cut to the chase, and I will start by asking, a very direct question. How has the current uncertainty in Israel, you think, influenced investment in Israel high-tech companies or VCs raising funds? And with your permission, I will start with Nimrod, and then Esther, and then Marina, I will have a sub-question to you too, if it's okay with you. So go ahead. Nimrod.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Jackie. So I think that, it's undeniable that the events that took place in the last, 18, 24 months in Israel and in the world have significantly influenced, like in the investment landscape in Israeli startups. I think that in a way that some of the figures talking about just, how much money was invested are a bit misleading, because there have been quite a few amazing, huge investments in big companies, and then but I think that less in terms of like numbers. So I think that if you're a very successful startup, you're okay, but if you're struggling a bit and you're looking to raise your first or like your seed round or your round A, it's more challenging, I think, these days. I think that especially what happened in the last year, since October 7th, has had a significant influence because, again, one, you see less investors around, less conferences, less people like investors in the country. So of course it does affect also the bottom line in a way. And I think that there are concerns. So what we see, at least, like I'm a lawyer, so we see that some deals take longer to close. Some people have more concerns than they used to, like in 2022, 2021, people just sign checks unconsciously, and now they are thinking about it a bit more. I don't think that people lost faith in Israeli tech. I think Israeli tech, the brand is very, very strong still, and even in certain areas like cyber, AI, defense related, it's even become stronger, and you see the investments being made and the exits. But and I don't think that people have concerns that Israeli startups will not deliver like the product on time. I don't think it has happened despite Army Reserve Service and all of that. But I think it's more about like reputational issues, and unfortunately some people, again, it's to some people it's become more complex to be associated with Israeli businesses. So again, you don't have to be anti-Israel, but it's a bit more complex these days. So I think it takes a bit more persuasion for some investors to take this step. Hopefully that will go away with time because people don't have very long memories, but I think at the moment at least, what we see at least in our clients is that sometimes it's a bit more challenging than it used to.
Yeah, okay. So I absolutely agree. I'll start with the good news. The good news is that there was a report that was published by Startup Nation Central that said that around $10 million was, $1 billion was invested in the last year in Israel, in startups in high tech in Israel. 7.2 was actually reported, and they assumed that it was around $10 billion that was invested in high tech in Israel, which is an amazing number, and it even raised from last year. So this is the good news, and even the number of companies that raised money has increased, and also exits. We had around more than 50 exits, acquisitions of companies, and I don't remember, I have it written that the number of the amount of the exits, but it's quite impressive. Mostly in cybersecurity, I must say. So there are lots of exits, big exits in cybersecurity. Nevertheless, the situation in Israel really makes the startups miserable because they are not able to go abroad and raise money. So it affects the small companies, because the small companies, they don't have enough money to raise because they are small. And when you are small, you start in small budget in Israel, so they don't have enough money, and usually the Israelis, the foreigners used to come to Israel, but now they do not come to Israel. So it's very difficult to raise money for a new startup because you don't have the budget to fly with. Just heard today that El Al has raised an income in 40%, but we all are suffering from that. The more established companies, they are now blooming because they have enough money. Most of them already opened an office abroad, because usually when you're a startup, you start in Israel with the R&D, and then you move abroad in order to open the operation and the sales and everything. So those companies they have offices abroad, and they also have revenues. So revenues is something very important in general in high tech, and especially if you are raising money, because then you can show the ARR, the amount of revenues you have, and then the valuation is according to the ARR, and then you have a lot of more opportunities to raise money from funds abroad. So I think the more established companies are doing well. where, as opposed to very early stage startups that are suffering. I can add that this brought, and stop me when you want me to stop, and the government with the Reshut HaChadshunut, IIA, Innovation Authority, they realized that, and they actually came out with a tender that will support angel clubs that will manage investors, very, very early stage investors, in order to invest in startups, because they realize that there are not enough early stage investors coming from abroad. And in Israel also, people are very reluctant about investing. And also don't forget that the interest rate, which is 4.5, doesn't help, because people say, okay, we have money in the bank, we can get 5% in the bank, why should we put the money in a very dangerous place? So that they opened such a tender, and they are supporting angel clubs in order to bring more investors to the company. So,
thank you. So more or less the same for you, but from the U.S. trade perspective, what are you experiencing, and are you thinking at all about, how to encourage, how to give incentive? I mean, is it something that you see at all as a joint responsibility, or is it something, it's a hurdle that we need to pass, and yes?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for the most part, I agree with what my colleague said about the big macro trends. So I work in the economic section of the U.S. Embassy. I work on trade and investment issues, and so that means U.S.-Israel trade, but also Israel's trade with its neighbors, with Abraham Accords, with other countries in the region. For the most part, on the big macro trends, what we're seeing is that the Israeli economy has proven, I think, surprisingly resilient, and particularly the high-tech sector has proven really resilient. We hear from U.S. companies all the time that Israeli high-tech delivers, that deadlines are met, that products are good, the work quality is fantastic. And that's despite all the challenges of this year. That's, with people serving in the reserves and displacement in the north and the Gaza envelope and the horrors of October 7th. And, despite all of the many challenges, we hear very good things from U.S. companies about their partnership with Israeli high tech. That said, anecdotally, we are also hearing the same things you are, that even though the trade numbers look good, it is a very difficult environment, especially for small startups, for new startups. The flight cancellations, the fact that there's not a lot of flights coming in and out of Israel, I think that's a particular challenge that we hear a lot. You don't have the networking opportunities, you don't have the U.S. delegations coming here. I will say we have our first trade delegation here on the ground right now. The first trade delegation since October 7th just came from South Dakota. But normally we have multiple trade delegations throughout the year that the embassy is handling, and this is our first one in a year. So that does tell you something. As far as what the embassy is doing, we do provide some resources to help Israeli companies that are looking to enter the U.S. market. So if you're looking for a presence in the United States, and that can mean manufacturing facilities, it can mean a warehouse, it could even mean a small sales office. We have a program called Select USA. It is run out of our Department of Commerce, and we do have Department of Commerce employees working at the embassy here. So they can provide industry analysis, market analysis. They can also make connections with municipal leaders, with local leaders, state leaders. So if you have a company that says, I want to go to Austin, Texas, or I want to go to Florida, or, they can make those connections. So that is a resource that is available. I will also make a plug for, we have a program called the Select USA Investment Summit, which is taking place in May of 2025. And the embassy always takes a delegation of Israeli companies to that summit. It's the largest investment summit in the world for investing in the United States. I think last year we had 33 Israeli companies represented. We're happy to take more this year. So if that's something you are interested in, I'm happy to talk more about that.
Amazing. That sounds good. Thank you. By the way, we are a small crowd, so if somebody here has a question that they want to raise, so we will have time for it, but, for sure.
Also, I can add that there are lots of programs that are programs between Israel and foreign countries, governments, like the BIRD program, which is a cooperation between the USA and Israel. So the BIRD, they have an office here in Israel, and they invest in Israeli companies. So we have all kinds of cooperations, not only with the USA, but also with other governments around the world. So this really helps. So sometimes there are some good things that our government is doing.
That's true. I'll add, in addition to the BIRD, which is a binational industrial research and development program, we also have BARD, which is the same thing for agricultural research and development, and we have a science foundation, binational science foundation, and so there are opportunities there where there's money that's been put in by both the U.S. government and the Israeli government in order to support innovation. There are similar programs with Europe as well, so we can talk about some of those if you want.
So all of these programs that you just mentioned, they're available on your website? Are there? I mean, how can a new startup? In my class afterwards, I guess that my students will share this information with their friends, or maybe not, just to keep the advantage to themselves. But if they will develop their own startup during this year, or 2 years from now, and we have startups like that being developed all the time, where can they get the information?
It's all online. We try to be very transparent about it. I know Select USA it's just Select USA at trade.gov is their email address, but you can Google Select USA. You can Google BIRD, which is BIRD, BARD, BARD. It's all available online, and like I said, the U.S. Embassy is also happy to answer questions about it, and I'm happy to give out my email address, and I can put people in touch with the right folks at the embassy.
Amazing. So to this point, because then I would like to move into a broader perspective, not just relating to the current situation, but still, what are your predictions? I mean, from your experience, not about the Israeli government or the war, but generally speaking, what are your predictions about this relationship between Israel and the U.S. when it comes to startup companies, let's say 4 years from now? I mean, do you see it going back to normal, becoming bigger, changing its direction? I don't know who wants to start.
I could have a go.
Go ahead.
So I think that I think that the Israeli-U.S. relationship is very strong, and actually I think that if you look at the startup scene, the technology scene, I think it's even going to get more closer in coming years, because like a trend that we see among Israeli startups is that I don't know if you know that today it depends on which survey you read, but between 50 to 70% of new Israeli startups incorporate in Delaware on day one.
Yeah.
For various reasons.
Again.
Yeah.
There was a
There
trend
was
like
a trend
this.
about 10 years ago, and now
Yeah.
it's back
Yeah.
again. It's related to tax, some requirements by some investors, political stability, various reasons. But the fact is that 50 to 70%, right, of the startups incorporate in the U.S. And also what we see, also because of the lack of flights. For example, we see pressure sometimes from investors on companies to relocate some of their executives to the U.S. earlier than we used to see, because sometimes we sit on boards and people say listen, we can't get to you, you can't get to us, you need to meet the clients, you need to be there, you can't pay $5,000 for a flight to the U.S., so just take your family and move to Tenafly or something like this, and live here. So we see more executives move to the U.S. earlier. And I think that it creates some kind of a new trend of, I call them hybrid startups, which are Israeli and U.S. at the same time. Mm-hmm. And some of the salespeople sit in the U.S., some of the R&D people sit in Israel. And I think that this is, again, I'm not sure it's good for the Israeli economy, because we would prefer to have those companies stay here for longer, but I think it's going to move us closer to the U.S. And we see that our clients, for example, we are going to open an office in New York in January, because we see that many of our clients move there, and they would like to see us with them there for a longer period of time. So I think I'm quite optimistic about this cooperation.
I think with the United States, we will continue to have a very close relationship because I believe that the business high-tech people really appreciate the innovation in Israel. To continue on what Nimrod said, I think that companies in Israel, not only that they open their offices to begin with in Delaware or elsewhere in the States, which is maybe said for Israel, because I don't know in terms of tax, etc., that might be a problem for Israel, but they also used to always keep the R&D in Israel. So the R&D was always like it was, the R&D people are in Israel and the business people are where the business is. But nowadays what I see is that also R&D people, they started opening positions for R&D also in the States. And I must say that one of the issues is really learning how to work together, which means also employ people from the States. So it's becoming more like not an Israeli company working with America, but it's like an Israeli company also employing people from the States or other countries in order to have a better go-to-market and a better understanding of the market. Because the most important thing when you go and do business in the States is really, לא שומעים? The most בסדר?
כן.
Okay, sorry. So the most important things for Israelis, we are known as like very direct, very quickly. We want to do the business the way we do it, and the important thing is now for Israelis to understand, first of all, what's the market they are selling to, what does that market need, and how do they do the go-to-market. So if their market is USA, they have to definitely learn that market, and using people from the States can help them, from the USA can help them learn the market and know how to make business abroad. So I believe the cooperation will continue, definitely continue, and the Israelis will cooperate much more with the USA people and not only become a Israeli company selling to the US, but it will be more like a combination of the two states, the two countries, USA and Israel. That's how I see it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would say I'm also very optimistic about the future. I think it is a very robust relationship that is just going to continue to get stronger and more connected. I think there's a lot of pent-up demand. So as soon as the war is over, my expectation is there will be a lot of delegations coming to Israel, a lot of visitors, a lot of flights going back and forth. So I would say if you have a small startup now or you're thinking about it, like now is really the time to do your research, to kind of get your business plans in place, get your pitch in place. I realize a lot of investors are in a bit of a holding pattern right now, but I think as soon as the war ends and flights pick up again, you're going to see a ton of people coming here.
Amazing. You wanted to say something? Share something?
No, you go.
Well, I wanted to thank you. It's always good to hear some optimistic views. And Esther, it looks like you're in the right business, and both of you, because you're an angel investor, so the minute the market goes back, so people will come and invest in the companies that you took the risk on. And Nimrod, I think it's a good idea to open a office in the U.S., right now, so it's good. So if the situation will go away and we will be back to business, as we say, from your wider perspective, how can Israeli companies effectively navigate the cultural difference? I think you touched a little bit upon it, Esther, and I think that we all experienced that before, that there is a big cultural gap. I think maybe my students already are experiencing it here, being a couple of weeks here in Israel. So do you have some thoughts or tips or experiences or stories that you want to share You want to start? I mean, you just came to Israel, so you probably feel it the strongest.
Sure. I mean, I think for the most part, the cultural differences are often overstated. I think Israelis, at least from my experience, generally speak English very well, understand American culture very well, understand how to navigate in American society quite well. I mean, yes, you have stereotypes, or maybe it's real that, you know, Israelis are more direct, more aggressive. I think that is probably true. Americans tend to be a little bit more reserved, maybe a little bit more like polite when you first meet somebody. We tend to, you know, we wear suits and we dress more formally. And but I also think all of those are very easy things to overcome. And in fact, I think in the business community, so maybe not so much the diplomatic community that I'm part of, but in the business world, I think Americans very much appreciate the directness and the assertiveness and the aggressiveness that they get from their Israeli counterparts. So I think you're all gonna do just fine. I mean, there are some other things, like I will say, I have been surprised how many Israelis have asked me who I voted for in the U.S. election, which
I will not
never ask in America.
How much
I mean,
what's the price of your apartment?
yes.
And
So
how much we
yeah,
earn.
that's true. So there's things like that, like in America, for the most part, unless you know somebody very well, you don't talk politics, you don't talk religion. But like I said, I think in the business community, people appreciate that Israelis are direct, you get right to the point, and in the business world, people just want to talk about, you know, what's their return on investment, what's the business plan, what's, you know, what products can you provide. So I'm not too concerned about the cultural differences.
I'm actually you're not Israelis, right? You're
No, some of
some
them
are
are.
Israelis,
So
okay.
I think this side is Israeli,
Okay.
this side not yet.
So thank you for coming to Israel. It's appreciated. But I really like the Israeli culture. I think it's amazing. I think it drives the innovation very fast, very direct, very to the point. So I believe nobody has to change nobody, the others. We don't have to change each other. We have to be aware of the fact that the other person maybe has a different culture, and we have to be aware of it, to know and to learn our business partners. So when you go and do business in the States, you have to do some education before you go, so that you understand the culture, where you understand how people react, how people should react. It's okay if you're more aggressive, it's okay if you're more direct, but if the business system says that don't call every 2 days, so don't call every 2 days. And if you get, you know, so it works both ways, I believe. And I believe that the funds, it verifies from VCs and private equity that invest in companies that they are already used to the Israeli culture, and I think they appreciate it. And business people, the corporates that are much more laid back, they are slow, and not always the scale of the time that it takes them to answer you is much longer, and you have to be patient, and you have to learn. You really have to learn your partner in order to do business with them, and that really is the same not only for the United States. China, Japan, Europe. In Europe, every country is different. UK, Switzerland, Finland, they're all different. And I did business with many countries, and I always learned what the culture of that people is before I went there. And by the way, it's always nice to have a chat and to ask and to learn about people, not what they're paying or voting, but about themselves and their ideas. So this is another what I think. And another thing is, if you are planning to do business in the States, so also learn the market in terms of what is more popular there. Is it B2B, B2C, cybersecurity, consumer tech? So if you want to succeed, you have to know your market, the go-to market, because different countries are interested in different things. So now defense is very strong, cybersecurity is very strong, AI is very strong. So if you're starting a startup, so try to choose something which is interesting in those countries you want to work with.
Okay, so I have little to add. I totally agree that I think that the Israeli mentality and the U.S. mentality, I think they do go along, and there's very good business being done between Israelis and Americans. But I also agree that there's no such thing as like a U.S. mentality, because someone from Austin or someone from Dallas or someone from San Francisco, New York could be very different culturally. And sometimes as Israelis, we think that we know Americans because we grew up on American TV, right? But so I think that, as Esther said, we have to be modest and sensitive and listen, because sometimes we just assume that someone is American, but they are American, but they are people, and they have their own views and sensitivities, etc. So we have to be quite modest and sensitive, and especially in like negotiation circumstances, where you have to try and understand what matters to the other side and what's important to them and what's not. I think it's better to listen than just to talk, because you can get more value there. And also I think that there's a good distinction between like the VCPE community that are very used to Israelis. They like the bluntness, they like the Israeli, go-get mentality. And sometimes when you're trying to sell an enterprise product to a company somewhere, it's a different mentality, and it's very much more local. And sometimes it helps to take like U.S. salespeople to do that type of work, because they might get better chemistry with those people.
I can add another tip to the Israelis that are, or in general actually, to entrepreneurs that are going to raise money or do business. When you come to a meeting, first of all, learn whom you are meeting is very important. To do the background research about whom you are meeting, and then when you get the meeting, don't immediately start to talk, like put on the presentation and start like lecturing your pitch, which you are very prepared. Try to first understand what is their interest. Why did they take the meeting? Did they take the meeting because they were polite, or are they interested? Because you might end up in a VC that is investing only in growth, and you're very, very early stage. So if you ended up in such a meeting, so you say, okay, I think I came to this meeting just to get to know each other. I want you to be aware of my activity and my startup, and for you to follow after me when I reach the stage. So you will also build your pitch according to whom you are meeting. And if there are suddenly surprises in the meeting, you have to be aware of them. So first of all, the background, but then once you have the meeting, try to first ask what's their interest, what are they looking for, in order for you to build your pitch in the right way, or the business.
I see that you already, went to the tips, and I think it's super interesting. And I would say, from my perspective, I was doing business with the U.S., from 2000 onwards, and it's really encouraging to hear what you have to say, because you're doing it more recently than when I did it. And I think that what I hear is that the U.S. business environment, especially when it comes to tech and VC and PE, got to know the Israeli business ecosystem and to trust, and that we can come more as we are. That reminds me, like in the beginning of the year, from what I do. So I have more than half of my class coming from North America, and in the beginning I was under a lot of pressure, thinking, okay, how can I adjust myself to the North American culture? How can I make my business program more similar to a business program in North America? And I think that my conclusion, which is similar to your conclusion in my world, is that I don't need to do that. I need to come with our culture and to be open to learn from our students' culture. And part of the reason they're coming here is because of our culture. And I guess that part of the reason why people are investing in Israeli technology has to do with the technology, but also with the implementation and with the approach and with how fast you're doing it. Things that has to do with not just the technology itself, but actually the culture.
Yeah.
So this is
I
very
think in
encouraging.
2000 and many years ago, it was like the technology, like the R&D in Israel was the thing because of the army and because of all that. But people used to say, but Israelis do not know how to make business. But nowadays, it's not the same, and there are many, many very talented business people, some who are studying MBA in universities in the States, and also those that are studying in Israel, but we learned along the years that we have to know also how to do business. So we learned a lot from the United States and from other people that are doing business. And I think now we have very good CEOs, we have very good business people, and R&D, which was always there.
Okay. Is there any question from the audience? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. My question is...
Maybe you can present yourself.
Yeah, hi.
Okay.
I'm Josh from Los Angeles, an MBA program. So, Esther, you spoke about funding drying up for startups here in Israel, and maybe Nimrod could also speak to this, but I'm not getting a reason why. So why, it's the war, but, there's still ability, there's companies still growing, there's companies still getting new products coming out. Why are global companies hesitant to invest in Israel now? Is it volatility? Is it because of public perception of investing in Israel now?
I will give you my answer. So I was happy to see that actually it's not drying up. It's actually it increased. So there was $10 billion coming in Israel only in 2024. So it's a lot of money was invested in Israel in the last year. So it's not drying.
Oh, sorry.
What I said is
companies to fundraise. Why is it harder?
What I said is that I said for early stage companies, startups, when they're in the very beginning, they don't have enough budget to fly and raise money out of Israel. And since all the foreigners that used to come in delegations to Israel in order to meet those people, they're not coming because it's very dangerous or expensive, and there are no flights, and everything is booked. And so investors are not coming to Israel. That's the bottom line. And in order to meet someone, in order to raise money, you have to meet the people face to face. I mean, in the Corona period, there was a lot of fundraising online, of course, and it was booming. But now, in general, people are doing business with people, so they want to meet them. So what I was saying, the early stage companies have much more difficulties because they don't have the budget to go and raise money out of Israel. Now, in Israel, there are many investors, but also you have to take into consideration the fact that the interest rate in the bank is really high. And if you go and put your money just in the bank and get 5%, so you think a lot before you invest in something that you might see the result after 10 years or 5 years. And that's why I said that people are investing more in late stage than in early stage, because the early stage, it will take another 10 years or 5 years before they succeed. And but then we don't know what will happen with the economy, with the war, with the situation in the States, everything. Whereas growth company that already raised a lot of money, they are already on the road for 5 years or 3 years or more, you can see what the situation with those companies is, because you see what the revenue is, you see the business model, because when you're an early stage startup, you have only a presentation and yourself to convince someone to put money on your startup. So, but when it's later stage, in growth period, it's you can show results, and if you are good, so the results are good. So what I said is that it's easier for growth, it's harder for early stage.
I agree, actually, with Esther. I think that when I started by saying that like the more mature companies that already show significant revenue find it easy to raise money, especially if they're like in cyber, AI, defense. Then we see like huge funding rounds and also amazing exits. Like every other day we read about a nice exit. I think it's why it's harder for like younger startups. So I think it's a combination, as Esther said. Like one, it's harder to travel to Israel and out of Israel. And it does make a sense because like if there's the first delegation that came to Israel after a year, so I guess that if there's like a rate of return for like for each 1,000 people that come here, one invests, so you need the people to come here, and then there's less of them. And I think also it's part of like a global cycle. I think like after 2022, that was amazing. There was kind of a hangover for investments, and then together with interest rates, so it's part of a global trend. So it's not specific to Israel. And I think maybe it's on the fringes, but again, it's something that I've heard a few times. I hope it's not bigger than that, but on the fringes, it is, for some people at least, it's more complex to be associated sometimes. Again, also, there could be amazing companies in Ukraine, right? But it's complex to invest in Ukraine. So if you're not familiar, so the Sequoias and those type of investors, they know Israel and they know that Israeli companies deliver and they can invest. But if it's your first time to invest in Israel, maybe you'll say, okay, maybe let's wait until next year when it's calmer.
And also, don't forget that some of the money for startups and companies in high tech comes from the corporates like Intel, Microsoft, and those. And some of them, because of the war, closed their offices in Israel. So Intel left Israel, and Microsoft really shrinked, and many other companies, global corporates shrinked. And a lot of the investment money came also from those companies that left Israel because of the situation.
And just one last thing, just I don't want to bring just the mood down, but maybe you could finish with something happier. But
yes, you need to watch more Channel 14.
Yeah, no, but I think that I heard from a client who runs an investment fund, and a lot of their money comes from a pension fund in Canada, by the way, not in the US. And again, it was last year where it was more like in the news, and this guy who manages like $2 billion in that pension fund, and he invests like $50 million a year in Israel. He got some protesters from the river to the sea banging on his car at the entrance to his office. And then he said he's like a Canadian Indian guy, has nothing against Israel, on the contrary, but he said, listen, it's a bit complex for me now. I don't want people banging on my car. Let's talk next year. So hopefully that doesn't happen much. I heard like a couple of cases, but hopefully also with time passes. But there has been some of that as well, and I hope that it's not going to last.
It's true. I think I'm sitting on the investment committee of a pension fund in Israel, and I can tell you that we always look at the risks, okay? We have to see the risks because we are managing, as a pension fund, we are managing the money of you and you and you and everybody for their pensions. So it has to be very, very careful. And when some risks come up, whether it's because of the river to the sea or whether it's because somebody in the risk department told them that it's dangerous now, and modus and all the rating that Israel gets now, so they say, okay, let's wait for next year. We have hundreds of billions, and we'll wait another year before we continue to invest.
Go ahead.
Based on what you say,
Maybe you can say a word about yourself.
my
So
name's Goldstein. Israeli and American, half and half. Started my MBA, regular MBA year, not too long ago, and I just finished a long time in the reserves. And now I'm back to start getting back into the business. My question is based on as a continuation-based question. I would see there is huge opportunity for anyone who does want to, in spite of the risks and whatnot, the global trends, who wants to invest here in Israel. There's a huge opportunity. I mean, high risk, high reward. I mean, that's VC, isn't it? And for the few people who do make that decision, wouldn't it be? I mean, are there specific players who are making these investments? Is it worthwhile?
Of course, I mean, there are always all kinds of people, you know. We're diverse. So I'm now, next week I'm going to the States, to New York, and I'm going to lecture in front of 200 or 300 Jewish investors that are interested in investing in Israeli startups. And the week after, I'm going to London for the same reason, to lecture in front of 300 Jewish UK people that are interested to invest. This brings me to the thing that, you know, Jewish people will tend more to invest now in Israel than non-Jewish people. And that brings me also to the thought, to give you just a thought that you have to think, what are you, when you want to start a startup, you have to think also about impact, about social, about ESG, because those things count as well. The climate, the energy, the green energy. So if you already have a good investor and that wants to, like, he's like a good Jewish, so maybe he also wants to invest because it's also ESG or that kind of things, as opposed to maybe gaming. I don't know. So this is another thing to take into consideration when you're building a startup.
Thank you.
So when you're doing your work as an economic officer, you said you spoke to neighboring countries for development work. Can you speak on how that's changed in investment in Israel from a U.S. perspective? So maybe like the Abraham Accords, has investment changed, or do you still do kind of work with UAE and Bahrain?
Yeah, what's interesting is that we were actually just looking at the trade numbers just the other day, and what's really interesting is that trade has not gone down with the Abraham Accords countries after October 7th. In fact, with almost every country, trade has increased, sometimes substantially, sometimes just a little bit. I think with the UAE, it was, you know, like 4 or 5% increase, so not huge, but still, given, you know, October 7th, given public sentiments in those countries, I think that is a real testament to the resilience of the Abraham Accords, particularly the economic aspect of the Abraham Accords. I will say anecdotally, we hear from Israeli high-tech companies about investments, especially from the Emiratis, you know, sometimes significant investments in high-tech. I think they're quite interested in food tech, climate tech, biotech. What's different now after October 7th is those tend to be quieter. So there used to be big public announcements and conferences and, you know, press releases, things like that. I think now those investments are quieter, but they're still happening. So yeah, I think, again, after the war ends, hopefully there's going to be more regional collaboration, and hopefully Israel will start seeing even more investment from the Abraham Accords countries.
Now, personally, as like a career foreign officer, like how important do you think economic policy is towards peace building and like nation development?
I think it's very important. I mean, like, we all want more trade. You know, trade is the way to bring people together. And it, like, the Abraham Accords is a perfect example where on the political level, there may not seem like there's much happening. On the people-to-people exchanges, unfortunately, there's a lot less than there was before. But on trade, the Abraham Accords are still going strong. And you know, I think that's a testament to the value of economic policy and trade policy to also push geopolitical changes.
I will add, sorry.
Yeah.
I will add that this is another example of how you have to learn whom you are doing business with. Because, for example, with the Emirates, you have to know that what they are interested in is building the high tech in their country, and also agriculture. They are very much into food tech and agriculture because they don't have it, and they want to bring technologies to their country. So a company that at the beginning, when it just started, the Abraham Accord and everything, so it was like all the Israelis went over there, flew there, and thought they're going to come back with suitcases with money, and that's not the case. They're looking to bring technologies over there. So if you're willing to move there, or if you're willing to sell them the whole thing, so this is the kind of business you have to look at when you go and make business with them, which is very different from a startup perspective. usually they do not invest in startups. They have tons of money, but they want to buy, they want to develop their own country. And you have to be aware of it and try to find something that they might interest them, but this is, you have to know whom you are doing business with.
I promised something positive, but I think the Abraham Accords, I think, are really successful. And we see, like, we represent an Abu Dhabi fund that invested in 2 food tech companies in Israel. And they've been in touch with us also post October 7th. I think they never asked anything, we never said anything, but yeah, business still continued, and they're still holding 2 Israeli startup companies, the minority stakes. And we see more and more of that. So I think that's a great thing, and hopefully when things settle down a bit and it's easier also for them to do business with Israel, like above the table, I think it would be there's a lot of common interest there.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Goren. I'm from Israel, and I wanted to ask about some industries you mentioned, the cybersecurity industry, for example, which is very strong. As someone that is coming from the automotive industry since 2019 and working for an American company, GM, but there's a feeling with experience also with in other companies that this industry is less strong. Maybe there is some issues. I don't know if it's worldwide or only in Israel or in the US. So what do you think?
So there's another thing that we have to be aware of, which is trends, you know. So there's a trend. There was a big trend of automotive, and suddenly everybody invested there, and so everybody started companies that are related to automotive. And then it goes like that, and then it goes a bit down, and then it depends on the actual market, whether it's really interesting or not. We saw it also with cannabis, with the cannabis industry, and we see it also with cybersecurity, but it's very strong. It's still very strong. We see it now with the AI. We don't know where it will go. So with automotive specifically, I think that suddenly the market understood that maybe there are also issues related to the green energy that is related to that, like the vehicles that are on battery. There are issues related to, is it healthy to have a car with a battery? Because suddenly there were scientists saying it's dangerous. You might get cancer, and so there are different. So it's hype, and then suddenly, and then another thing is the size of the market and understanding the go-to market and the size of the market. So I think automotive is interesting. It's less than what it was, and it really depends on what you're developing, and that's why you always, this is another thing for you as an entrepreneur, you always have to be with your eyes open to the market and to the trends and to the change. Not so that you have to leave the automotive market, but maybe what you are doing needs to have a pivot. Maybe you have to change a little bit. Maybe you have to change your business model. Maybe you have to change your market. Maybe you have to change your technology. Maybe you have to move from hardware to become a software. So same for robotics, same for everything. There's trends, and then it takes time until the market realizes the trend, and the real life gets into those. And then, there was stages like Dov Moran, who invented the discount key, genius, right? Discount key. And then the second company he invented was a smartphone. But he created the smartphone when the iPhone was already out. So maybe he started before the iPhone was out, but then the iPhone came, and he continued raising money for his small phone, which didn't make any sense. And people invested in him because he was like a genius. He invented the discount key. But here he made a mistake. So you have to be all the time, you have to listen to the market. You have to listen to the feedback that you're receiving. And don't be arrogant and think that if you know what you're doing. Always be with 2 ears, listening to everybody. Take your own decisions, but be open for changes.
Thank you, Esther. Any more questions? Okay, so we are we're getting to the end. Marina, do you have some, closing remarks? If we want to do, your tips or insights or thoughts or...
I'll just offer a tip that I haven't heard yet, which is I would encourage you while you are still students or young professionals to take advantage of opportunities specifically offered to students and young professionals, such as study abroad opportunities. I mean, obviously, a lot of you are already doing that. There are fellowships, at least to the U.S., we have things like the Fulbright and the Humphrey Fellowship, and so those are available to the students and like young professionals in the first couple of years outside of school. I would just say now is the time in your life to do something like that. I mean, I know everybody's impatient to go make money and start businesses, and that's wonderful. But also this is a good opportunity to take advantage of some of these programs. If you want to learn more about the U.S., about U.S. culture, or if you want to do the same sorts of programs in Europe, I would think about taking advantage of that at this point in your life.
My tip is, first of all, don't be too busy building your CV, because then you're too busy sometimes doing things that you don't want to do just because you're building your CV. And I have kids your age, so I know what I'm talking about. Try to go with your passion. Sometimes you don't even have to study. Maybe university belongs to the past and not to the future. So not that I'm saying, you're already here,
Thank
but
you,
I'm not.
Esther.
But I'm saying, be aware of your passion and go after your passion. But at the same time, listen to the feedbacks that you are getting from other people, from smart people. Which brings me to the other. Jackie mentioned network, and I'm a networker not because I love talking all the time with people and meeting people all the time, but I think that network is very, very, very important. You have to learn how to do network. This is very important, especially if you want to do business abroad. And the third thing is always make sure you work with women. Not only make sure that you are any company you work with is diversified, and not because women are better than men, because you need a diversity. You need diversity because this is part of listening to other people's perspective. And I can give you so many examples, like why there are more why do women suffer more in car accidents than men? Because the people that actually invented the security belt were men, and the body and the size of the body of a woman is different than a man. So you need women with you anywhere, anytime, and this is my tip.
Don't take women.
No, I think my tip is to listen to good tips from other people. I think it's always good. I'll just take on board, I think, the tips. One, if you have opportunities to study abroad, do things when you're a student, you're young. I did it when I was a student, and it was really valuable to me. I think learning about other cultures, it really opened my eyes to other opportunities, other possibilities, and I think it's great. And also listen. I personally find it sometimes difficult to listen, but I taught myself to listen because I think it's very, very important, because you don't really know. And other people might know better than you, and if you talk to people, you might get some clever ideas.
Thank you. So I will try to sum up. And it took a turn that I wasn't expecting, but it was super interesting, I think. So we started a little bit low, and we talked about small companies having hard time finding money right now. But I think that it went better and better. So if you came in the middle, so you thought it was a very optimistic session. So I think everyone are optimistic about the future. You talked about, after the war, there'll be many investors coming here just waiting. So money will probably flow in. And you were talking about these hybrid models and the fact that these disadvantages would create opportunities for Israeli companies to get closer to the US market and work together. And we all understand that although the hiccups in the market right now because of the war, because of the situation, still there is a lot of appreciation to the Israeli business men and women and to the technology and to the high-tech sector, which didn't go away yet. It was very refreshing for me to hear that the approach about cultural difference, that it's not such a big deal, and each one can come with their own culture, and we will get along as long as we are open and listen and look at the other culture and interested in learning it and being open to it. So I think that that was my takeaway. I think, of course, that, to learn about the markets, and always, it's not just related to the US, but every time you go on a meeting or you go to meet somebody here, there, everywhere, it's more important. I think that to us Israelis, we do need to put an effort to do it, because I think every Israeli experiences a situation that somebody talks and all you do is wait for them to finish in order to say what you have to say. And I think that what we really need to learn, and maybe from Americans too, is really to listen, because we never know, maybe when we listen, we hear something new, and then we need to change what we want to say. Go with your passion. I would not say don't go to university. It's against my interest, but expand your horizon. So for people that came here to study, it was a great move. And for people that are planning to do exchange, go ahead and do it. The importance of networking, and I would add networking for real curiosity, not a technical networking, not just, exchanging cards, but actually maybe not getting 50 cards from one meeting, but getting 5 cards with people that you really share the moment and you can feel comfortable, communicating afterwards. Diversity is very important, and women are really important, and I will always vote for that. And unless there is anything else, I think that we can close this session. I want to thank you so much for coming. I really do hope that we will have more audience, but I understand people are watching us online. And as I said before, millions will be watching that after that. And I really enjoyed and learned. And I hope everyone here also didn't feel like they were wasting their times. So thank you, Marina, and thank you, Esther, and thank you, Nimrod. And
Good luck to you.
And good luck. Yes, thank you.
Last time I didn't find your place, and now suddenly it seems lost.